Hey guys, in this episode, we're going to be reshuffling and reconfiguring my little modular here. And I'm just going to walk you through the thought process, and we're going to plan things out in ModularGrid and then come back here and actually swap out the modules. So to give you sort of a high level idea of why I'm doing this, I guess two reasons. One is I never really planned out this modular. I sort of just added modules as I went, and I was sort of experimenting, but it turned into this Franken modular that doesn't really have a core purpose or sort of sense of organization. So what I'm going to do is rip everything out and sort of plan things through from the top to bottom. And there's obviously some flaws here, like I have two quantizers, which I don't really use. There's some modules that I rarely use. Some of the layout is a bit awkward. I have a filter in the corner here, and it's not very close to anything else. So we're going to solve all those problems. The other reason is that if you remember, before my channel was called Once Upon a Synth, for those of you who were around 6 or 7 years ago, I actually used to have a tiny little modular with some make noise modules in there, like an Echophon, an Optomix. And I sort of was disconnected from those modules because I left them in Canada when I went to the US to work there. And recently actually came back to Canada permanently, which is why you sort of saw a gap in lack of videos. But now I got reunited sort of with that old modular. So I'm going to pick and choose some modules from there as well. Like I really like the Echophon. So I'm going to try to squeeze that into here somehow. The general sort of plan I'm going with is I'm going to do a hybrid sampler oscillator as my two sort of signal paths or signal generators. And then I'm going to keep maybe a couple of filters, my sequencer. And first, let's go plan that out in ModularGrid, which is a website for laying out and planning modules. And once we have a good layout that we like, I'm going to come back here and actually put it into practice and make some quick patches, and we'll see what that sounds like. So that's enough rambling. Let's get started. Okay, so we're in modulargrid.net now. I've created an exact replica of my existing layout. And if you're not familiar with modulargrid.net, it's a website for planning your Eurorack modular. So you can create cases of any size, width, and height. And then you can search for modules down here and drag and drop them into here. So it's a great way to plan your HP real estate. So the first thing you'll notice that I have two quantizers here. I have this microscale and a tip-top one. So I'm going to remove the tip-top one because I find myself using the microscale more often, and it also takes up less space. So let's get rid of that for now. The other thing I'm going to get rid of is this ADSR envelope generator. I'm going to rely on maths and peaks for envelope generating. I'm also going to remove the micro VCA and replace it with the Optomix. All right, so we're going to go down here and I'm going to search for Optomix. And there's a bunch of different results. I'm just going to pick the original one down here, which is the one I have. If you click plus, it'll sort of shoot it up and find space for it. So right now it jammed it down here, and that's fine for now. I'm also going to remove the tip-top one, which I find I don't use that often. And so I'm going to insert the Echophon because I want to have a delay. And let's just grab the standard default one here. And you can see this cat gets angry and he's running across the screen. Because sometimes you don't have enough room, but you can sort of place things outside your case temporarily while you sort of figure out what you want to do. All right, so I've moved all the modules outside of the case so that we have a clean slate. In general, I'm going to put my sound sources up here on the top left, my sound processors on the bottom left here, my sort of sequencer and quantizer up here, and then finally whatever remaining modules and sort of my CV sources on the perimeter here. So I'm going to start with my sound sources. I have a Z3000 and an STS. So the STS is a sampler and the Z3000 is an analog oscillator. So that gives me variety in my two sound sources. Finally, I'm going to put my sound processing down here. So I'm going to put the fold processor here. That typically creates a lot of distortion. So I'm going to put a filter next to that so I can optionally filter that sound to smooth it out a little bit. I'm going to throw in a second filter here, mainly to give me an option to run these two sound sources through independent filters with slightly different characters. And then I'm going to finish my audio chain with the Echophon here, which is a delay unit. All right, continuing up here, I'm going to add the Optomix next to my sound sources. So the Optomix is a low-pass gate, well, two-channel low-pass gate. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a voltage-controlled amplifier and filter together. And you construct this with something called a Vactrol. And this gives you really natural sort of bongo type styles that you would find in West Coast synthesis. Next to that, I'm going to put a microscale quantizer and the Z8000 sequencer. The idea is that I normally like to pair these two together. So I would run a CV channel through the quantizer, and then I can run the two quantizer channels into my two sound sources, which both have volt per octave control. Down here in the middle, I'm going to put the maths, which is a very versatile CV source module. And so I can probably use that in a bunch of different cases. So I like to have it sort of near the middle here. The peaks is similarly a very versatile sort of Swiss Army knife type module. It can act as an ADSR, an LFO, or even a drum machine. And so I'm going to put that here mainly because I wanted to structure everything else. And the peaks doesn't necessarily have a single purpose. So I'm going to put it on the perimeter here. And finally, I'm going to put my Tempi, which is an 8 or 6 source clock generator. And I'm going to use that primarily to clock the sequencer here, and I can clock different versions of the clock for all the different CV directions here, as well as I can use it to trigger the sampler and strike vectorals and stuff like that. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this layout here. So let's go back to the modular and actually put this in practice. So now the next thing we need to do is just rip out all these modules and then put in the new layout. So let's go. All right, nice and empty now. Some of those screws were a little stubborn, so I had to use 2 different screwdrivers. So that was a little annoying, but all is good. All is gone. So let's put it back in the new configuration. All right, so I've laid out all the modules as per our modular grid layout. And if you'll notice, I haven't put in the screws yet, because sometimes you don't know if you'll run out of room or run out of power cords. And sometimes you have wide modules that hide other power cords that are hard to reach. So one pro tip, I guess, is don't put in the screws until you've laid out and connected all your modules into the power. And once you know everything fits, then you can safely start screwing things in. So I'm going to do that now and fast forward. Actually, I just noticed the 2040 is upside down, so let's flip that one first. So that's another pro tip. Make sure your modules are right side up. All right, we're all done. All the screws are in. All the modules are nice and snug. The next thing to do is power it on, and hopefully we didn't blow anything up. All right, the lights are flashing, so it looks like we plugged it in correctly, but let's patch it up and make some noise.
Hi. 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 Then how would you like to go through life, hearing nothing more than how would you want?
Slušalci, dobrodošli u program. Ovo je, dragi slušalci, dobrodošli u program. Ovo je...
All right, let's leave it at that for now. I'm really digging this new layout for now. I'm going to have to spend a lot more time sort of experimenting with it to get a feel for the layout and sort of get an intuition for where things are. But so far, so good. If you guys have any recommendations for modules I should swap out or new modules I should get based on what I have here, or if you notice me doing something weird that there are probably more efficient ways to do, definitely let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like this video if you like it. Make sure to subscribe if you like synthesizers and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one.